Hi, in this video I teach you how to recode numeric variables. If you haven't looked through the previous video on text fields, please do so because we built on how the if function works in the previous one, so you need to know about that. So why do we want to recode numbers? Well, for many reasons. And I think particularly pivot tables only allow us to group and classify numbers in very specific ranges. So the moment that we want to define specific ranges for ourselves, that there are not 5-year intervals, 1-year intervals, or things like that, we need to actually compute the variables outside the pivot tables and then use it from pivot tables. And this is the case. So here we use again the if function, and then I'll show you how it works. It works very similarly that we did with the text fields. So we have the if, we have a condition that in the case of numbers we can, it is not necessarily that the cell is exactly the same content like before. Before we say if b2 is equals to y, here we can say equals to 5, lower than 5, higher than 5, lower or equal than 5, or higher and equal than 5. But the value could be either a number or a text, and the other value could be also a value, a text file, or nothing, or a number. And see that there's a difference. When we talk about text fields, we always put them in quotes, but when we talk about numbers, they don't need quotes. So let me give you an example. If we have this set of data, some individuals, some sex, and some age, and we want to categorize this in, for instance, let's say the individuals under 15, those from 15 to 65, and those from 65 over, then let's start to try to compute something. So if we use the if, we would just write if, in this case is C2, if C2 is, let's say, mine, lower than 15, and then we say, let's go to young, and let's not write anything else. So we are saying if in C2 we have a number that's lower than 15, do fill in with young, otherwise don't fill in anything. And then you see that's 1, 2, and it's only defined for all those cases below 15. You could say that we could try to do the same thing with those over 65 in the same way that we were doing the repetitive if commands for the family relationship, and then we can do that. Yeah, so we could just say also an and here, and then repeat the same type of a statement. Now we would say if C2 is higher than 65, then we would have to say, let's say old for just is, and then we don't fill in anything else. So if we drag down, then now we have some old people also coming in, and yeah, so it seems that it's working. The only problem that we have with this type of if statement is that the condition is just one. C2 is higher, C2 is lower. How do we go about now the range between 15 and 65? Well, for doing that, we need to learn about something else. And it's called the AND statement. AND is just very straightforward. So we just write AND, which state one condition and another condition. And then what happens is that instead of getting a number, we just get a true false. So this AND, it's just useful for doing other things, but it doesn't do much on its own. For instance, what we could do is just create the AND to identify the cases where we have people between 15 and 65. Let me show you. So instead of typing if, I type and then I say that age should be higher or equal than 15 because we were not considering 15 before. And the second condition, see, it's that C2, it's lower and equal, we were not considering 65 before, than 65. And see what happens, we get a false because the person is young. We get a false for those young, we get an actual true for those people, and then that's what we have. So now we have a way of finding people in ranges. The if command on its own, it doesn't allow us to use ranges. But with using the AND, we can create this artificial range. So by a combination of if and ANDs, we can actually do the codification that we wanted. Let me show you to you for a second. So this is what we're going to try to do. We start with our if command, and then we're going to say this is the condition, and the condition is within an AND. The condition is just giving us that we're going to have a lower and a higher number, and then we're going to say that that's true to identify our friends here, and then we're just going to add a value. So what we're doing, in fact, is that this and this bit is actually the condition, but the condition is an AND condition on itself. It's a nested formula. So let's see how it works, and you're going to see that it's not that difficult. So what we do here, this is our original formula, is that now we're going to create a new if, and this new if is going to have this range inside. So let's just work. So we write the and we write the if, and this is where everything is going to go inside. Now we write the and to make the possibility of putting two conditions together. The first condition for being between 15 and 45 is that, once again, C2 has to be higher or equal to 15. The second condition is that C2 has to be lower or equal than 65. And now we just close it. This is the condition. Instead of having just one simple condition, C2 higher than 65, C2 lower than 15, we have within an and. And let's see that it occupies the same place, the space between the parentheses and the comma, space between parentheses and the comma. And now we just assign what do we want this combination to. And then this needs to be true. And we said that because we need the and to be true. And then we hit young. Let's see, hopefully I made it work. And then we have adults. You see, this is what we had before, and now the and, when the combination of C3 being higher than 15 and C3 being lower than 65, when this is true, then we assign the value adult. And that's how we have produced a classification. Here we have just used young, old, and adult, but we could also the same way have just said 1, 2, and 3. 3. So you see that if we now stand it down or stand it up, we just obtain exactly the same thing. So, but we don't need to use the quotes. So this is very useful when you want to define your own ranges. You only need to remember how to use the and, because with the if functions, you cannot use a combined statement of conditions. You need to use the and to state them first and then say this has to be true. This condition has to be met first in the first part for the values to be assigned. So you're ready to go and classify ages.